Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zhang here, and today I'm back with another episode of Trainer Tip Tuesdays, a weekly series on this channel where I cover a different aspect of VGC every week and give you guys a bunch of tips and pointers on that topic. Last time we looked at best of 3 play, and if you've not seen that, I'll link it in the description below. Other topics we covered include team preview and general tips in improving your play in VGC. But today we'll be talking about something different, and that's note-taking. You know, you are allowed to take notes at live events. If you look at most of the top players, you know, they'll always have a notebook or a notepad by their side, and a lot of players have always asked me, you know, what exactly are you taking in that notebook? So I decided I'd just take a couple of minutes and talk to you about this. As always, if you enjoyed this series, please share your support by leaving a like on the video. Anyway, without further ado, let's just jump into it. So, why take notes in the first place? Might be a bit self-explanatory, but some players don't realize. Of course, notes really allow you to help you remember your opponent's team easily. I know when I play without notes, I often actually forget the Pokemon that my opponent had after team preview. Like, I'll remember maybe 4 or 5 of them, but it just helps so much when you have a notepad in front of you. You can just look at all 6 of their Pokemon easily. At least that's how I think. Maybe you can remember them really well, but for me, you know, there's no downside to noting down your opponent's team. That way, it also helps you in making predictions. I know when I'm predicting my opponent to switch out and I know all 6 of their Pokemon, you know, you can make the safer plays throughout that instead of trying to second head and guess yourself and whatnot. It also allows you to gather and use info easily in a best of 3 set, so that's why all the players at Worlds will always have a notebook by their side, because, you know, Worlds is best of 3, so when you have the ability to jot down, you know, key things about that set, for example, this Pokemon outspeeds this Pokemon, and this Pokemon has a unique set slash item, whatever, you know, that kind of stuff can go a long way, especially if you jot it down. So when I play best of 3s, you know, I'll always note down my opponent's team, their Pokemon, their items, you know, any important things, as I'll go into later, because it really helps me visualize when I'm planning for future games and whatnot. It also allows you to look back on previous matches you played, and sometimes I like to analyze my losses especially. You know, I look at what Pokemon my opponents brought, what I did wrong in terms of team preview, were there any surprises that he or she brought that caught me off guard, etc. You know, of course, it's there to jot down important game-relevant information. You know, just having a notepad in front of me, at least, able to write down any quick things I want to remember for future games or even for the game in the moment. And it's really, really helpful for live events and online tournaments. Maybe not as much if you're playing on BattleSpot or practicing on Showdown, but for live events and basically important Wi-Fi tournaments, I'll almost always have a notebook next to me. So what do exactly take notes on? Well, I personally think the most important is basically your opponent's 6 Pokemon. Honestly, sometimes you don't need more than that. That can be enough, especially for a best of 1 game. But some other things I like to note down are the order in which my opponent's Pokemon are sent in. So I always jot down which ones are their leads, because, you know, sometimes you can guess your opponent's strategy based off what Pokemon they're leading. That can also allow you to guess what they have in the back, so that helps me. Of course, all items and moves is kind of a given. How fast your opponent's Pokemon are relative to yours, because sometimes a Pokemon will catch you by surprise in terms of speed. For example, let's take bulky Thundurus, or Thundurus in general. A lot of the times it's built bulkily, so you don't expect it to outspeed a Pokemon like Terrakion, but of course a potential Thundurus set is max speed Thundurus, and that is something like an outspeed Terrakion. So if I'm playing a set or even 1 game and my opponent's Thundurus outspeeds my Terrakion, that's definitely something I would want to note down, just so, you know, if I were to play that opponent in a best of 3, I just remember that for future games, or, you know, it's just helpful to note things like that down. And I know it's for players with really good memory, like, you probably will be able to remember all these things, but at the same time, I like being able to look at my notebook every turn just to remember and recollect some things I noted, because those are the most important aspects of the game, and it makes winning the game, in my opinion, a bit easier. And then, you know, turns for events like Weather and Trick Room are really important too, especially Weather, but Trick Room as well. I mean, those are things that are really, really time sensitive, and a lot of the times if you're not counting correctly, you can end up losing, so you'll want to note those down. And then stat boosts and decreases from moves like Icy Wind, other moves like Dragon Dance, etc. can really help you out, but Icy Wind's one of the big ones. I think a lot of players often forget that their opponent Icy Winds them, and as a result, like, they make plays that don't really make much sense because of the speed tiers. Like, you can be a couple of turns down and then completely forget that your opponent Icy Winded you, but if you noted it down, it could be a lot more helpful. So I do think these are all some pretty important things, and if you want to take notes, these are basically the things you should be looking out for. So I decided I'd show you guys 2 pages from my notebook, actually, from events this season. The first picture is best of 1 play. It was from the very first Premier Challenge I attended of this year. So that was the best of 1 play, so, you know, I didn't really feel the need to jot down too many things. You see that round 1 was against Angel, and normally at events I'd like to jot down my opponent's name and their record at the time too, and the round. Helps me remember just when going through things and potentially writing reports as well. So you notice that I personally boxed the Pokemon, let my opponent spring to the game, and then I put a 1, 2, 3, or 4. You know, 1 and 2 just indicate leads, 3 and 4 indicate back Pokemon. Otherwise, not too much. I'll jot down the Pokemon and maybe a couple of moves just because, you know, I like seeing that in front of me. It makes me, in terms of guessing what else they have in terms of moveset, a bit easier. So, you know, like, also jot down the Mega Evolution. You know, you see Angel use Charizard X there, so I did note that down. And then I was using a Trick Room team, so I had Trick Room turns on the side. Round 2 against Chuppa, lower on the bottom, same kind of deal. You know, just box the Pokemon, number them, and then a couple of things about, a couple of notes about his Pokemon. For example, like Gothitelle had Tickle and Thunder Wave, and that's a big, you know, kind of a big deal because Thunder Wave over Trick Room is a very important aspect of a Pokemon such as Gothitelle. Hydreigon having Fire Blast, you know, would indicate to me he didn't have Flamethrower, so small things like that. Ludicolo with Fake Out, kind of self-explanatory. And I typically, like, am a bit pretty lazy about this, but it can still be really helpful. The next page is from the top 8 set I played at Texas Regionals, and this I went into a bit more detail in terms of the Pokemon and the sets. What I like to do is I like to just dedicate a bunch of rows to each Pokemon, you know, 3 Pokemon per row, and then write the potential items, any moves, whatever. And this is really, really helpful in a best of 3 set. So you'd imagine you get so much information from game 1, and then game 2 and 3, you can look at this information going into it, and you can, you know, just piece things together a bit more. I always think of Pokemon like a puzzle piece, and each turn is kind of like a puzzle piece, and having this information just makes it easier to solve, in my opinion. So, you know, I noted a lot of different important things in that set because my opponent had a lot of cool and unique things. For example, Skydrop and Aerodactyl, Life Orb on Rotom Heat, really, really crazy Hydreigon set with Habomberry, Taunt, Draco Meteor, Thunder Wave, no Protect, Reuniclus with a Helping Hand, so all those important things. And when you note down the items, you can also guess what other items your opponent has. So, for example, since Citrus was on Reuniclus, I guess that Rotom Heat did not have the Citrus, and it did end up having Life Orb, small things like that. And then for the actual games, I didn't write down anything important just because I didn't feel like I needed to, so at the end I just noted my opponent's Pokemon and Trick Room turn. I guess I gave up on that at one point, but yeah, like, just noting my opponent's leads, which Pokemon they brought, and then, you know, to go into my mindset, maybe for games 2 and 3, I would think, you know, my opponent brought these 4 Pokemon, but this one or this one didn't do very much, so as a result, she's probably going to change it up, and, you know, as you do see on the notes there, she did end up completely changing up her team. So, you know, it's pretty simple, at least my notes are, but I like to keep it simple. You know, I like to be neat, organized, just write down their Pokemon, because, once again, that's the most important thing, and then any other small moves, Trick Room turns, whatever, but, yeah. So in conclusion, remember that there's actually a timer in VGC, especially at live events, which is 45 seconds. Don't focus on your notes over your gameplay. Gameplay is still the most important thing. You should not be spending very much time jotting down things. Like, the worst thing is that you're writing down something while the game's going on, you actually miss something important, so keep that in mind. Also, in VGC tournaments, your opponent will have public access to your notes, so don't help them by guessing their sets. I've had a lot of opponents in the past just write down, like, you know, they think they know my team, they think they know all my moves and items, so they'll, like, guess my items by writing my items next to my Pokemon, and by that, you know, I can use that to my advantage. If I see you guessing my items, then I'm gonna play a bit differently, or I know that you think it's choiced, and I could play around it, you know, either bluffing it, because maybe you're right, maybe you do know my item, but maybe you're also wrong, but I can use that to my advantage. So small things like that. Basically, in my opinion, for notes, you should only be writing down things your opponent has confirmed. You know, they shouldn't be getting anything away from it. With that being said, notes aren't really necessary, but they can help you greatly in games, especially in those predicting those switches. And they're also really, really helpful in best of 3. Like, if you're playing a best of 3 of VGC, you should probably be taking notes. You may also want to jot down your 4 Pokemon after the game is over, so if you remember your leads and your back two, you know, I like doing that a lot because you get to analyze your wins and losses for the future. I like to especially look at Pokemon I ended up bringing a lot, which Pokemon I didn't bring. You know, when I'm testing a team, if I play 20 games, like, what Pokemon did I not bring at all throughout those 20 games, or which one had the most usage. That way, you know, in terms of making changes to the team, I know exactly what's the most crucial member to it and maybe what are the less useful members. But yeah, that's basically it. This is a shorter one, but I felt like note-taking is something that a lot of you guys have had questions on, and I wanted to clarify, show you guys some examples of my notes as well. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this one. Leave a like if you did. Check out Road to Ranked if you have not already seen it, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Alright, peace.